Hey, I promised myself I wouldn't do this, but I made time to do it anyway. This is the meta of World Open War made before the event. So, let's go. World Open War takes place in a minute. I'm literally in the airport as you're watching this, so and I'm very excited for it. As you probably can tell, a lot of the top teams are going. A lot of interesting things can happen. Um, I can become world champion if I win. But yeah, so a lot of different stuff is going on, and that's really exciting. I've been looking over lists like crazy, as you may have seen these last few days. So the event itself, it's 1100 points. It's a single generic platoon. There are 16 teams of 3 players. That's 48 players. So it's pretty big. We're playing 6 games over the weekend, 3 games in a group. So there are 4 teams in each group, and all of the teams will play each other. So that is 3 games. And then on the second day, there's a playoff where the 2 groups, so the top bracket, the winners of the group play for the overall victory, and the losers play for the secondary victory. So even if you lose the group play, there's still something to play for, which is kind of cool. I love that. The groups was Group A, Poland, Wales, the USA Snafu guys, and South Africa. Group B was Denmark Vikings, my team, Cymru, the Welsh second team, USA Swans, and the Swiss Helvetian Guard, a new country in the bold action international scene. And then in Group C, we had Germany, the first Deutschland, Team Deutschland, and then England, Spain 2, and the Barbarians, which is a mixed team of mercenaries from different nations who stepped in because there was a vacancy. And then in Group D, we have Spain 1, the Spanish Legion. We have Scotland Sultries, and we have Denmark, the Jutland Company, and we have Germany Luftwaffe. So those are the teams. You can see the seeding here as well that the World Open War did. So the first team is the highest seeded teams. So right now, Poland, Denmark, Germany, and Spain are the highest seeded teams. Second highest would be Wales, Cymru, England, and Scotland. Third would be the USA's, both of them, Spain to Denmark, and then South Africa, Swiss, Barbarians, and Germany. Because most of them are new teams, they are the lowest seeded as such. This seeding was used in order to spread out the top seeded teams so they don't all face each other in the same group to start with, which I really like that. It may increase the chance of a top seeded team coming into the winners bracket, but then it may decrease a little bit the bottom seeded team's chance of coming into that winners bracket. You can't get it all right. It's something you win, something you lose. I just like it because it even outs the groups a little bit. Now, as per usual, I go over the main ideas here, and this is a longer video, you may notice, because I've been doing a lot of different stuff for this this meta review. The order dice, they are between 13 at the very lowest and 23 at the very highest. Like, there's 1 at 23, and then there's a gap down to the next order dice lists. The most common order dice count to take is 16, and the average is 16.6, which means that it's right around that mark that people think that that's the Goldilocks zone for 1100 points. So we have 6 lists that are low. We have 19 lists that are in the low end of medium, and 17 that are in the high end of medium, and then 6 lists that are above the medium. which means that the meta here is fairly strong for what you bring in terms of dice. Nations, we see 13 British, so not all teams that could take a British army have taken a British army because there are 16 teams. 12 Soviets, so again, not all teams have taken. And this was a little bit of a surprise because in a very fixed meta, you would expect to see those two nations because those are the ones that typically do well in competition play. So like I recently released a video on the meta of what's been happening like over the last year in bold action competitive play, and you'll see that the Brits are absolutely dominating that, and Soviets are coming second. So not all teams picking that is an interesting thing. USA is here with 8 lists, and as is Germany, which is a surprise, but a very welcome one. The German lists are not bad at all. I think there's a lot of players willing to try out, willing to test if they can make Germany great again. And I think the possibility is definitely there. We are also seeing 6 Japanese lists. Again, fairly expected, I think. I think in the current like rule set that Japanese could do well. We haven't seen them do so, but they can. So I'm really hoping that they'll do something here. And then one guy, one brave soul brings a minor nation, one Hungarian list, which is kind of neat because it means that you can take double tanks. It's the only nation where you can do so. So there was obviously one guy thought, this is worth it, I'll try it out. So that will be interesting to see if that works. Now, the builds. If you don't know what this is, go and watch my video on army builds. I'm seeing a lot of skirmish / mixed bag lists, so there are 15 of those. This means that there's no like single build that's dominating the meta here, although skirmish and assault lists are the most prevalent because there are 13 assault lists. 9 barbecue lists, so the barbecuing is not out, and especially for the British players, both Scottish, Welsh, and English players, a lot of them are still running on barbecue, whereas many of the European players have left barbecuing and have moved on from that. Is that a good idea to leave barbecue? I don't know. Maybe we'll see. We'll definitely see what happens, because this is clearly a thing. Barbecuing has been going out of most top placements at tournaments, except in the UK this past year. So that will be interesting to see if barbecuing is back. There are 5 horde lists. Horde lists are a little low from what you would expect, because I think that's because that barbecue has been a thing, has really hurt the horde lists, as has the assault lists. But a good horde player can do really, really well, but it takes a lot of getting used to. It takes a lot of training. Then there are 3 faux tank lists. I think the pack itself doesn't really lend itself to a lot of armored vehicles. You can do a little bit with Brits and Soviets, where you sort of spam out universal carriers. And there are a lot of lists playing around with the idea of putting multiple armored vehicles in their lists. But in general, there aren't a lot. Which is kind of neat for the meta, because it makes it more of an infantry game, more of a mixed bag game. But it does mean that this build, this pack, sort of doesn't lend itself well to armored fighting. There are 2 forward deployer lists, which are going to be interesting to watch, where they have multiple units that can forward deploy. Many of them like chunky units that are not just small teams. So that is an interesting take, and I'll be really interested because they are playing the missions, not to kill opposing lists. So it will be really interesting to see how these two players do, and whether or not they can sort of bring these alternative builds, because you can sort of see there are some builds that are the most popular one, the barbecue builds, the assault builds, and the skirmish builds. But can you actually make a build, an army build that can do well and become popular? That is next meta. There's only one leaf blower list. That's a Japanese list, which I think again this is down to the pack. When you're only bringing a single generic platoon, leaf blowing with a lot of HE is not really possible unless you go and build Belgians or French, or Japanese, which is what this is. So I didn't expect to see many leaf blower lists, but for the diversity of the meta, a few more could be nice. There's only one MSU list. Again, a newer build that people are still getting used to, where you have multiple small units, and I'm really interested again in seeing how these alternative builds, how they play out. Can they actually work? And one cavalry list. I had expected to see maybe one or two more, especially since people have been whining a little bit about how overpowered cavalry is recently on the online forums, and we're not seeing it in top competitive play, not yet, at least. By the way, this one cavalry list is a Manchukuo Japanese cavalry, so lovely list, lovely list. So, you know all this. I do rankings from 1 to 5. 1 is not competitive. 5 is the best. I couldn't make it better myself, even if I desperately tried. And for me, the rankings here at this event are fairly high on average. There's a few 3s. There are a lot of 4s. There's a lot of 3.5s. So strong competitive lists. 3.5 to very strong competitive lists, 4s. I don't see any true 5er lists, although there are a few that come really close. So what I did was I sort of tallied up the rankings for each individual list into a team ranking, and this is it for Group A and B. Now, you'll notice immediately that Group A, Poland, Wales, Snafu guys from America, and the South Africans, is very, very close. The rankings there are for the lists are very, very close. And even though Poland is the top-seeded team, you'll notice that my evaluation of lists actually places Wales lists above that, as do I with the American, the Snafu lists. So it will be really interesting to see, because my evaluation of the players is a little bit different. So it'd be really interesting to see who comes out on top, because I think this is going to be a very tight competition in Group A. Very tight. If I go to Group B, then Danish Vikings, my team, for me, that is the highest ranked. I may be totally wrong and extremely biased on these lists. The Cymry Welsh and the Helvetian Swiss are next, and then the Swans, the American Swans, are the lowest for me in this group. So I think that we're going to see something of a fight between the Welsh and the Swiss for second place, and I think that my team is going to win this group. Maybe. I'm just throwing out prediction there. But for Group A, I am not sure who's going to come out on top. It will be a bloody fight in that group. I may have a slight feeling that the Polish may take it, because the Poles have some really, really good players, but so does the Welsh and so does the Snafu. I mean, it's a difficult one. Group C and D rankings. For Group C, Deutschland, the main German team, the team 1, where Manuel sits in, is a 10.5er. England is the highest ranked for me. That's a 12. However, the players are very good English players, but maybe not so used to international competitions, though some of them I think did attend the WTC last time. So again, this will be interesting to see. Can Manuel's Germans pull out the win against the English competition? The Germans are of course the highest ranked, the English are second highest ranked, but for me the lists for the English are more scary than the German lists. Barbarians and Spanish second team, Almoravets or something, they are ranked a little lower, and I think they are going to fight among themselves for who comes out on top in the bottom bracket of this group. As for Group D, I think that will again be very close, just based on lists. But the Spanish Legion with Achilles and the very experienced players from Spain who have several gold medals from the WT standing at home, I think they'll have it just based on players. But the Scottish lists are really good, and the Scottish players are not bad at all. So it will be a fight again among those two teams. For me, the Danish Jutlandish team and the German Luftwaffe will fight among themselves for the in the second bracket, I think. So that is my predictions and my rankings. What does this mean for the overall ranking? It means that I think that Scotland, Spain, England, Germany, Denmark, and Wales and Poland, we will be fighting in the top bracket. That is what I think will happen, but I'm not sure. Now, the main takeaways for what I'm seeing here is, for the Soviets, is that there's a lot of different army builds out there for the Soviets. They have mixed bag, they have barbecue, there's assault lists where there's a lot of veterans, many of them with SMGs. There are forward deployer lists, there are horde lists, there are foe tank lists, and there's MSU spam. So the Soviets are clearly the army that has the most different play styles and the most things that you can do with them. They're the Swiss Army knives of bold action. And if you look at the order dice count between 14 and 23, you can also see that here. There's a huge variety in what you can do with Soviets. Huge. There are two units that you typically would see with Soviets: dog mines and Stuarts. And the funny thing here is that not everyone takes them. Definitely not. Like for dog mines, 5 of the lists, the Soviet lists, didn't take them. 7 did, with an average of 2 dog mines per army list. By the way, most of these dog mines were small teams, so they would have 2 mines each. I don't think that there was anyone taking a 3, or I don't think there was a single one with a 3 dog mine team. So and the average was 2 for those that did take them. So there's a lot of tank hunters in the mix here, because most Soviets do take a lot of their anti-tank choices. And as regards to Stuarts, again, 7 take a Stuart, but 5 don't. So there's a lot of other things in the mix here as well. There's a Tokarev, there's a Katusha, there's a T-28. So a lot of other things are happening, and I think that's healthy. And I think people are moving away from our dependency on Stuarts to always go in a tank platoon or in a generic reinforced platoon. We're moving a little bit away from it, and I really like that. That's cool. It's good for the diversity of the meta. As for the Brits, assault builds are clearly the most popular. Barbecue builds and mixed bag and foe tank builds comes a little bit after that, so it's not all assault builds here. The order dice count is again very varied. It's between 13 and 20 for the Brits. There are, of course, a lot of Gurkhas. Only one British list had 0 Gurkhas. 12 of the British list had an average of 3, and there were some who had like 5 or 4. So there's a lot of them who had like 1 or 2. So Gurkhas are not the only unit being taken by British players at all. There was a lot of guard units as well. Um, so the variety here is larger, and the mix between regular Gurkhas and para-Gurkhas is roughly 50-50. People are doing a little bit different things with these two groups. I think a lot of players are taking Gurkhas, just regular Gurkhas, because they don't think that there'll be many barbecue lists that they'll have to face. And some players take the para-Gurkhas because they think that there will be barbecue lists to face. So we'll see what happens. Personally, I don't take the para-Gurkhas, even though I am one of the assault Brits. I'm not taking para-Gurkhas. I've moved away from that. Stewards, again, we're seeing a lot of stewards, but not all stewards. 9 take a steward, 4 don't. Among the people who don't, there's the Crusader making an appearance, the AA Crusader, which is very nice. It's a thing that Alistair has been championing, and it's really a nice little vehicle. I just assembled mine. I'm still painting it. It stands on my shelf right over there. Then there was the 25 pounders. Those were every bloody where, but not. I mean, there were 9 25 pounders and 4 lists that didn't take a 25 pounder. Me among those 4. So the British 25 pounder is immensely popular for its versatility and its value for points. American takeaways. So the main American build is the skirmish build, although we are still seeing barbecue builds with regular engineers, or veteran engineers, by the way. The order dice count is between 14 and 20, and every single American player takes the Malta rocket launcher, the 140mm rocket launcher. Every single one takes one of those. It's just so bloody useful. So if you're looking at what is the meta for the USA, taking one of those is everywhere. Stewards, however, that's 50-50. 4 people take a steward, 4 don't. So there is a Sherman in the mix there as well. And that's going to be interesting again to see that can we break the steward meta? Can some of these people who don't take stewards, who take something else, do well? There's even one very clever player who took, because of one of the units he chose, who took double bazookas just to counter all the stewards there. So interesting little take here, and of course skirmish Americans with BARs everywhere. Now Germany, there's a lot of German attempts. There's a lot of German thought process going on here as well, which is very nice. The main build for Germans is a mixed bag platoon, sort of what I call the greatest hits of Germany, where they take all the units that are really good, and then because they're so diverse, they end up with something that resembles a mixed bag platoon. But there's also an attempt at noob bashing with double multi-launchers, and there's an attempt at barbecuing as well. For the Germans, the order dice is between 14 and 18, so none of the true horde list MSU spams, and not that many of the low order dice as well. Now, the most common unit for the Germans is the 250/9. 5 people take one of those, only 3 don't. The 250/9, if you're ever building a German army, I think that is one of the things that you pick up early, because it's really good. Darker Panzers. A lot of the Germans don't actually take a Darker Panzer, even though they could. So a Panzer III with one of the extra coaxial MMGs. So, or a Polizei tank, by the way. 50-50 on that, which is not what I expected, but a lot of people have reserved their armor choices for something else. Among other things, there were 2 Kugelblitzes. So that is people attempting to break the Stuart meta, because the Kugelblitz is definitely the anti-Stuart vehicle. Because it has doubled heavy autocannons, it's really dangerous for Stuarts. There were only 3 multi-rocket launchers in all of the German lists, which was a surprise to me, because the cheap Nebelwerfers are just very, very good, and they're on par with the American 140 millimeters and the British Land Mattress. So I had expected to see more in the German lists. One of the German lists, of course, had double multi-launchers, so a Panzerwerfer and a Nebelwerfer. So in that respect, we're ending up with 4 multi-rocket launchers, but only 3 lists had multi-launchers. LMG teams are everywhere. So that is again one of those greatest hits of Germany units that you pick up early, because it's just so useful, so good. Many of the German lists are gear heavy, so they're buying Panzerfaust, flamethrowers, SMGs, assault rifles. Some of them even are buying LMGs, which I don't agree with, but let's see what happens. And then there are some firsts. The double tap sniper, the Gewehr 43 or whatever it's called, makes its first appearance, so it'll be very interesting to see how that does. And the Eben Email Pioneers also make their first appearance. That's the Pioneers that have +1 to hit with the flamethrower. So flamethrowers on 2+. Nice. I am expecting the Eben Email. I think that is being fielded by Achilles. I'm just guessing, because I don't know which list he's bringing, but I think it is. The Japanese takeaways is that the main build is the Horde build, but assault builds are close by. So the difference here being a Horde is where you spam inexperienced or regular dudes as many bodies as you can. The assault build is more focused on veterans or expensive units like cavalry. So there's a difference there. The Horde is the main build for most of the Japanese players. Leaf blowers and barbecue also make an appearance. Japanese barbecue. You would never thought to hear me say that, but there is actually one list that brings both an engineer unit, a flamethrower unit, and an SS key, which is a flamethrower tank. So that is 3 flamethrowers, definition of barbecue. The leaf blower list, I had expected to see more leaf blowers in the Japanese meta here, but apparently not. The order dice for the Japanese is higher than average. It's 15 to 19. And I think that is because the Japanese can take the suiciders for cheap, right? Bamboo, bamboo was a lot of places, but not everywhere. 2 Japanese players don't take any bamboo units. 4 of the other players had bamboo units with an average of 2.5 for each army. So quite a lot of bamboo in those hordes, but not all of the units are bamboo. Then HE, one of the things I had expected was there to be at least 2 pieces of HE in each Japanese army. I thought there would even be 3 pieces of HE, but there wasn't. 2 pieces of HE was the most common one. 5 Japanese armies had 2 pieces of HE. That would be a mortar and a howitzer, or a howitzer and a horo. One list had 8 pieces of HE. That is my Mark on my team. He plays Japanese. He loves his grenadier units, so he's bringing a lot of light mortars. That's a lot of zeroing in. It'll be terrifying to face. So no one brought the 3 pieces of HE that I had expected here, which means that a lot of people actually, for the Japanese, brought the Chiha Shinhoto tanks, which has a medium anti-tank gun. Again, trying to break the Stuart meta here. Love that. Really nice. Other takeaways that we might have: the Darker tanks. The Darker tanks are many places, but not everywhere. So 26 players brought a Darker tank, 16 players don't. Many of them who don't are trying to break the Darker tank meta by taking something that is dangerous to 8+ tanks. Like there are two Lee Grant tanks. There's a Sherman tank. There are Kugelblitzes. There's the Shinhotos. So a lot of other stuff there to kill Stuarts, basically. And then mortars. Mortars, we're still split in the meta here on what happens with mortars. But one thing that most people agree on is that light mortars are out unless you're running them as the Japanese player does in units. If you're buying a mortar slot, then you're not typically buying a light mortar. Two people did so. One of them bought an inexperienced one, and one bought a veteran one. So I guess the inexperienced dude had just a few points left over. The veteran one, I don't know why that happened. But there we go. As for the rest, people cannot agree. So there were like 18 players who bought inexperienced medium mortars. And 11 people bought inexperienced heavy mortars. But 8 people bought medium mortars with spotters regular, and 8 people brought heavy mortars with spotter regular. So there's a split here, and I think it's to do with the UK meta and the European meta, because a lot of the European players are bringing inexperienced mortars, whereas a lot of the UK players are bringing regular mortars with spotters. So it will be interesting to see what happens there. Now, to watch for teams. For me, I am looking at Wales because Wales is down their star player. I think we can safely say that Russell was their best performing player, and he is out because he's TOing. So how will Wales do without that star player? That will be interesting to watch. England is a new team. The English team for the WTC was mainly composed of the Juggers. The Juggers are not attending, so England is based around other players in the English tournament scene. So it will be interesting to see how they perform going into this. Some of them, of course, attended the WTC, but not all of them. But most of them, I know, are very experienced competitive players and tournament players. So they should be able to do well, but we don't actually know, even though they're highly seeded. Vikings, my team, the Danish Vikings. I think the main thing to watch out for there is the two strange builds we have. I, of course, have a very regular, bull army of Gurkhas. But the other two builds is a forward deploying Soviet army and then an HE spam Japanese army. So how will that do? We don't know yet. And then Spain, of course, will they win again? That's always one to watch. And then, of course, there's all the new teams, the teams that we don't actually know what to expect from yet. There's the South Africans, who are mainly composed, I know, of immigrants, like people who've left South Africa or who have a tenuous at best connection to South Africa. And then the USA Swans. I don't know who the players are for that, but it will be interesting. I think Alan is on the team, but who the rest are, I don't know. So that is again for me a fairly untested team. The Barbarians is, of course, a mercenary team, so that can be all kinds of different people, right? The Jutland Danish team is composed of mainly new people who have been attending tournaments here in Denmark, who have been going a little bit abroad, but not much. So they are, of course, also new, untested. And then the Swiss, based mainly around Stefan, who moved there from Germany, I think. What has he come up with? What players has he found in Switzerland? How will they perform? We don't know yet. That'll be interesting to watch. And then the German Luftwaffe, the second German team, I have no idea who they put on that team, which will be really interesting. New people, we don't know what they're capable of. Just so those are the teams that I'm watching mostly, which is more or less everyone. Now, players to watch, I think. For me, these are the watchers. Achilles, is he bringing his Germans? Am I guessing right? And he's bringing his Germans. If he does, can he make Germany great again? Can he perform as he's done at the WTC with his Germans? Is that a thing? That is a very, very like a top tier, a 5 player who brings what I would consider a 3 army. So, like, there are people who've been asking me, what happens when a player does that? Achilles is an example of that. If he does well, he's proving that you can do that, and he's proving that Germany might actually have a chance again. Then, of course, I'm watching Manuel. Will he be the highest ranked player at World Open War? He's done extremely well in the past. He has been the top player in the world a couple of times. He's won a lot of tournaments. Will he do so again? I'm watching that as well. Myself, I've been undefeated now for 2 years. I have not lost a tournament game since WTC in Cork. So, will I get my first defeat in a couple of years? I'm on a winning streak here. Johnny Curran, will he bring back barbecue? Because I think Johnny Curran is in the English team, and I can see the lists. I know which list he's bringing, I think. So, and he's bringing barbecue. He did so to the Scottish Nationals, and he did very well against tank platoons. Will he bring it back where it's dangerous? That is one to watch as well. And then American Skirmish. Can it win? Is it top tier? Because I've been saying now for a while that skirmish armies and mixed bag armies are actually, I think, back in the top meta. But is it true? Is that what we'll see? Go watch it, because there's a lot of skirmishes, a lot of mixed bags. And then Japan. Oh man, do I want one Japanese player to do really well at this tournament. Hopefully my own Mark, of course. But I really want to see Japanese actually winning stuff instead of just being like the army that we all think could do well. So I really want that to happen. So that is the players to watch, the individual players to watch. Right. I'll see you everyone at the WOW World Open War. Wow. And now I think as I'm releasing this, I think I'm actually packing up my minis to go and play. So, see you. Cheers.